Hello guys, how's it going? My name is Dal. Ever since the Mage Tower returned, I've been in there constantly grinding out for all the different transmogs, tackling the challenges to earn my spell tome mount, and right now I'm working on the meta achievement to do the Mage Tower's every spec in the game. When Blizzard originally came up with the Legion Mage Tower, they captured lightning in a bottle, creating a unique solo player experience where you tackle tough bosses and challenges for unique rewards that are not mandatory at all. Back in Legion, many of us wondered if Blizzard will try to recreate the Mage Tower experience again and come up with a spiritual successor to the amazing content of back then. And originally, Torghast was supposed to be that spiritual successor. The ever-changing, ever-shifting hallways of Torghast, so you have a different environment every single time you run it. Different Torghast powers that change the way your class plays, really letting you experience the most overpowered version that your class could be. And of course, a ton of different bosses with various challenges and various mechanics. And at first people kinda liked it, until it became part of a regular weekly loop just to keep up with the legendary progression. So many players called it Torghast for the chores that you have to do, but also it felt like a chore running through it. It didn't capture that fun essence of the Mage Tower. Heading to patch 9.2, we got a lot of new additions. Brand new raid, Tezzavir split into 2, Mythic Plus dungeons, class changes and tier sets, as well as a new mode for Torghast. It's called the Jailer's Gauntlet. It's a boss rush style format that trims the fat of the Torghast experience, keeping the fun part of fighting bosses and collecting overpowered powers. So far, there's been a really positive reception by the community of this game mode, so I wanted to give it a go after testing it out and doing the hardest difficulty over on the PTR. But right before that, most of you guys watch these videos are still not subscribed. However, the more of you are reminded, the more of you do, so let's keep it going. Subscribe to the channel as well as hit the bell in order to get videos like these, as well as future 9.2 updates and discussions. So, the new mode is called the Jailer's Gauntlet. As I mentioned, it's a boss rush mode. Basically, think of a normal Torghast run where you have to do all the boring stuff like killing ads, looting treasures, and then finally getting to fight the boss. Skip all that nonsense and just fight bosses. Your character has a high chance of starting with their best powers from the get-go, so you can make an early version of the build that you want to play. No corridors, no souls to rescue, no traps, just you fighting endless waves of bosses and elite enemies. And it's very likely you'll be fighting multiple bosses at the same time, trying to split your attention for them both while not getting one-shot by their various mechanics. In my testing, there's 8 different floors of back-to-back boss fights. These boss fights can be randomized. Sometimes the game will throw a bunch of bosses at you, sometimes they're one by one. Sometimes there's ads in between, and sometimes they'll just throw everything all at once. The pacing is the biggest difference between the original Torghast and the one here. All these fights go by very quickly. You have to adjust and adapt at a moment's notice, and then you get to advance to the next floor in just minutes. Even though this game mode is pretty quick, there is no timer. So if you're someone who wants to take your time, enjoy the content, try it for yourself, take it at your own pace, you can. Just make sure that you're not getting overrun with the different bosses and the ads that the game will throw at you. Because the pacing of this mode is faster, the game will throw a lot more powers at you. So this allows you to build up a full set of powers for different builds. Whether you want to go for something more overpowered, or like a tankier build, or a huge utility build, you can craft your builds very quickly and easily with this mode. In normal Torghast runs, the hallways are just not nearly long enough for you to get enough powers to be able to do anything crazy or wacky with bosses. You can definitely craft some really strong characters, but nothing as good as this. In this mode, you're able to achieve the same kind of power in just a few floors, and it feels really fun to be able to experience some of the most overpowered builds that your class can play that quickly. Like every other Torghast experience, there's 8 layers to all these floors, so each layer will have 8 floors for you to ascend. Each layer adds extra difficulty to every one of the challenging bosses. With each layer you ascend, there's different rewards. There's rewards at layer 2, 4, 6, and a mount at layer 8. I want to show you what this looks like. This is going to be my run on my mage on the layer 8, the hardest difficulty version of this new boss rush mode. The powers I got at the start weren't amazing. I got a lot of mirror image powers, which plays well into the defensiveness for mages, but it does leave me lacking on damage, which means killing these bosses at the start is going to be pretty slow. As you slay ads and bosses, they have a chance to drop you even more Torghast powers, which can augment your playstyle on the fly, giving you defensives if you need one in a pinch or more damage to make sure that you don't get overrun. For me, it got pretty dicey at the very beginning, and it's very easy to fail one of these runs at the very start. I had a very powerful boss with another elite blast me from the side, but I picked up an immunity power which let me stabilize a little. I cleaned up the rest of the bosses the game threw at me, picked up all the powers, grabbed all my abilities, and proceeded onto the next floor. I picked up a few powers. One of the better ones was whenever I polymorph an enemy, knock him back, which I can do with Fire Blast, or whenever I root them, I do more arcane damage to them. So taking care of 2 bosses at once wasn't nearly as difficult as it was on the first floor. Then we picked up a power. Whenever I hit enemies with fire or frost spells, they take more damage from my arcane abilities. This effect can stack from the 2 different schools of magic, so I'm able to decimate 2 bosses even faster than on the last floor. The floor 4 had no breaks. The game just kept throwing the strongest elites at me back to back to back. None of these enemies were really the boss enemies, but rather a lot of the elite enemies with some of their powers. Imagine having to dodge the Dreadlord's one-shot frontal and constantly being swiped at by the Tremor Beast. I think if I wasn't a mage with some of the powers I picked up, I wouldn't have been able to deal with them as easily. And look at all these powers on the ground afterwards. At the end of this run, we're definitely scaling even better than we were before. By floor 5, this is where things became interesting. I have a mini army of images fighting by my side, while I'm able to blast a Devourer boss with a 900,000 arcane barrage. Since we were doing so well, I decided to just focus on as much damage as possible. We picked up more powers for even more elemental damage and headed to the next floor. And at this point I realized I'm no longer playing World of Warcraft, I'm playing something else entirely. This footage is not sped up. This was just my normal movement speed of my mage and how fast I was casting my spells. I kept letting the damage go higher and higher into the comical numbers, to the point where I'm fighting against these bosses that are supposed to be really tough and challenging, that have multiples of hundreds of thousands of health, and I'm able to delete them in just 5 or 6 globals. And by the time I clean up on floor 7, the game still keeps throwing even more powers at you. Whether it is defensive powers, offensive powers, at this point I just have so many racked up, I'm just picking up anything that's going to make me even stronger on the next run. So by the time I hit floor 8, we're actually unstoppable, deleting bosses like they're nothing, deleting any of the ads within seconds. Some of the bosses spawning in have over 1 million health, and we're able to clean right through that in moments. Don't get me wrong, some of these guys do still hit hard. We just picked up really good defensive powers at the very beginning, which carried us throughout this run. And for the very final boss, I was able to re-experience Legion all over again, getting those sweet juicy Legion numbers of a 1.8 million arcane barrage. And that is my full run of the Layer 8 Jailer's Gauntlet, the new boss rush mode, available for testing on the public test realms. For this mode, there are 8 layers, and it took me a little bit of time to get all the way to Layer 8. On my way to Layer 8, I was able to get every one of the rewards, and the final reward at Layer 8, the sturdy Soulsteel Morat harness, which summons the Morat mount. So the mount is going to be the best reward you can get from this new game mode for doing this challenge on the highest layer difficulty. The other rewards were a Hearthstone toy, which has a very Maw theme to it, a player title, and a Maw themed battle pet. These rewards came from the layers of Layer 2, Layer 4, Layer 6, and Layer 8. But the Layer 1, 3, 5, and 7 all came with Soul Ash and Soul Cinders. Currencies that are going to be less necessary for patch 9.2 when our main characters will be crafting their next ranked legendaries. But maybe they'll keep the Soul Ash and Soul Cinders as a way for players to catch up if they're lacking on those resources. In my opinion, they should change it with something more exciting. This mode is pretty fun, but there's 8 layers of it, so you have to do it 8 times in order to unlock all the different rewards. And half of those runs are just going to give you currency you're probably not going to use in your main character, which isn't going to be that fun. Instead, it should be replaced with a variety of cosmetics. Things like weapons that players have not been able to wield before. Maybe taking some of the weapons that certain guards in the Shadowlands or some of the creatures in the mall wield and repurpose them so players can wield them. Awesome looking shoulders, awesome looking helms, cosmetic back pieces, because that's been one of the biggest selling points of Shadowlands. Take any of the items and models that never made it into the final product of Shadowlands and find a way to reincorporate them back as a reward for players. I don't want this game mode and the rewards to be filled with anything that will be used in the end game. I'd rather let it be like the Mage Tower, optional cool cosmetic stuff the players can do if they want to, but are not necessarily forced to do. But that's going to be my video on the new game mode. Surprisingly fun, definitely check it out on PTR if you do have the testing realms downloaded. Thank you all so much for watching. If you guys enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up. I would very much appreciate it. Link down in the description to join our Discord, and I'll see all of you guys in the next one.